Hi, glad you could join us here at Visual Art Photography Tutorials. I'm Ray Scott. Today on Neighborhood Photographer, we're going to do kind of a part 2 of a previous tutorial. Now, in that tutorial called Angular Architecture Photography, I gave you 7 tips on how to shoot downtown buildings. And we were basically pointing the camera up and grabbing angles that were including the sky so that we could use that as a background. And we went down to the financial district to get buildings that were maybe a little bit newer so they would have interesting angles, that kind of thing. And in that video, I said that I was going to do another video, this one, and we were going to shoot it completely differently and get different results. So that's what's going to happen today. I'm going to give you 5 tips. We are going down to the financial district. It's the same area, but with a completely different look for you. Okay? 5 tips for that. I've put the banner up on the screen in case you want to go back and see that first architectural photography tutorial. As usual, comments and questions are welcome down below. Let's go. As photographers, we spend a lot of time trying to make a 2-dimensional medium into a 3-dimensional medium. What I mean by that is so often we're so conscious of depth of field, we want to try to portray our photos in a 3-dimensional way, even though we're working only with a 2-dimensional thing. Now, tip 1 for today in our architectural photography tutorial is treat your images as 2-dimensional images. Try to eliminate the 3-dimensional aspect. So, our first tip, take a look at this picture. 2 buildings, this one in the foreground, this one behind. Now, we know that these buildings are not exactly flat. Because our minds know that, we tend to look at them as being 2 separate entities, you know, this in front, this in back. But the reality of it is if we weren't that well conditioned, it could be this building in front and this building in back. All right? So I'm trying to treat this as a 2-dimensional thing. So, and just try to render it as a flat canvas, which is a difficult thing to do because you have angles like this and you have angles like this and angles like this, which are trying to lead your eye in, which makes it feel like it's 3-dimensional. But in reality, if you can just sort of strip your mind of all the preconceived notions, you realize that this is really just a 2-dimensional image. And we achieve it by using a focal length here of 105 millimeters. I was using, by the way, my walk-around lens again, that 24 to 105 millimeter lens that I love to use in the urban environment because it's all I need is one lens. So it was set at its maximum focal length of 105 millimeters, and I was using an aperture of f11. These buildings are not too far apart, so I really didn't need a really small aperture. f11 sufficed. I was shooting at ISO 200. And this is the effect you get. Okay, let's move on. Same thing, 2-dimensional. All right, 3 buildings here. There are 3. This one, and also this one, which is actually this one, and it's just a slice of it. But again, it's a canvas, it's flat. They're all just, it's a perspective thing. Again, shot at 105 millimeters, f11. Same thing here. This time, 3 buildings. Okay? This one, and this one. But they're stacked like right on top of each other. And they're all different distances from each other as well. And I'm going to show you exactly how far away from each other they are, even though they look like they're all just 1, 2, 3. Look at this next picture. This is the way it actually looked, okay? So this building here is this building here. This building is this building, and this building over here across the street is this building. So this is quite a distance away because I was standing, I guess, about over here, if you will, outside of the picture frame, and I shot this, and this. Okay, so this is across a wide street here, but yet when you look at it, they're all stacked on top of each other, and that's the effect I wanted. I wanted that 2-dimensional effect. This, by the way, was shot at an aperture of f16 because I really needed a maximum depth of field so that they could all be sharp. This is sharp, this is sharp, and this is sharp. Even though there is great separation between here, and less, to a lesser extent here, but there is separation. But look at that. Okay, so that's tip number 1. Try shooting in 2 dimensions if you can. Reflections. That's one of the reasons why we wanted to head down to the financial district, because we wanted to have buildings that were a little bit more modern, and oftentimes more modern buildings means glass buildings, and glass buildings means reflections. So here you have it. Kind of surreal, kind of painterly. You've got all of the waving, the wavy kind of glass and that sort of thing, because the glass isn't flat, so you have all these different unstraight lines, these wavy lines, and so on and so forth. Great color coming back through here and even in here. Look for reflections in buildings. Again, same thing. This one shot at f/16, ISO 400, maximum depth of field. This is telling the story of something that's happening across the street in back of me where I'm shooting. Okay? Great color again. Look for the color in buildings. Great for reflections. Completely different story here. Here you have, you're shooting in a glass building, the reflection of something going on in back, again, of course, and but you've got the frames of the glass in the glass, and it's almost offering a bit of a frame for your shot. And you can see it's going down a street. This is the reflection. And these are old buildings. And they look wavy in here. And it's, again, very, very painterly. And a different look altogether. Another reflection. Again, telling a story of something that is in back of you. Here's the building. Here's the reflection of something directly behind me where I'm shooting on the street. That's tip number 2. Look for reflections. Tip number 3, throw something in completely different. Add a little bit of disruption. Add a little bit of tension, like this. Okay, now normally, and in my last tutorial on architectural photography, I was showing buildings like this and things like that, and just the building and the sky. Well, here you have the building, and you have the sky, and you have a reflection, but what the heck is this over here? Okay, a street lamp. Now, as I said in the last video, I was very, very careful to leave this kind of thing out. But sometimes you may want to put something like that in, and it's called tension. For some people, it may be like, what's that doing there? Why is that there? It's disrupting the whole flow of the image. While others may look at it and say, wow, that's an interesting element. And guess what? My eye keeps on going back to this. And I look around, and then my eye keeps on going back to this. You know something? It's totally personal taste. There's no right or wrong answer on this, as is the case with everything when we talk artistically. But again, it could be added as a bit of a design element. Now take a look at this one. Again, a little bit of visual tension for you. Here we're putting a tree, a silhouette of a tree up in front of the building. Okay, so now you're shooting through this tree to the building. And the building itself is on an angle. You've got that kind of dynamic going on. And then you've got this tree, which has nothing to do with architecture at all in terms of man-made architecture anyway. And you've got it's like a juxtaposition. It's two completely different things thrown together. I used a maximum aperture, well, a small aperture of f/16, so that this could be clear and this would be relatively in focus as well, even though there was a bit of a distance between them. And I wanted this to be almost in complete silhouette. You can see some light coming through here and everything. I could have made it a little bit darker, but I didn't want to. I wanted, it's a tree, it's dark, and you have this lighter background and this man-made design in the background. Adding tension through disruption. That was tip number 3. Again, tension through disruption. In the last video, again, I would have just had the building and the sky, and you would have had that whole design element. But here, I noticed that there were some window washers, and I thought, hey, that might be an interesting addition too. Maybe not for everybody. It kind of worked for me on this one. Plus, you have this nice blue down here and everything else. But anyway, so that's tip number 3, adding tension through disruption. Tip number 4, if you can find it, How about trying to combine the old and the new? All right? Here you have this really old building in my city, old. And right in back of it, you have a newer building. In fact, we used this building before with that tree. There it is there. So combining the old and the new, look for that. Here I use an aperture of f16 again because I really wanted this to be clear, and I wanted this to be clear too. Okay? You could also just take away the sky completely and move it a little bit more and just have, you know, a piece of each if you wanted to. There's all kinds of different ways to do this. Again, you know me, I love things on angles. I tend to not want to make things upright too much. I like to have the tension of the diagonal here, and even all the tension in the building, the diagonals here, you know, the off angles here, and all that kind of thing. Again, it's to taste. It depends on what floats your boat, if you know what I mean. So that's tip number 4. Look for the old and the new. And finally, our last tip is sometimes you just want to single something out. Just put it on its own. There it is. Okay? Nothing else. Now, you'll notice that this is not totally symmetrical. Okay? The building obviously is not, because you have a short side here and a long side here. But it's not symmetrical in the sense that there's space here and there isn't any space here. And that may bother some people. But if you'll notice, the way I've angled it, and I did this on purpose, I've angled it so it all kind of ends up in the center up here, even though it's offline here and offline here. Now, I could have easily just moved over here and had it go straight up. But again, you know me, I like my tension, and a little bit of an open space here, a little negative space here, nothing here, but it all ends up symmetrical in a sense, because up here is where it's all kind of centered. All right, while everything else is sort of off-center. But that's tip number 5. Single out a building. This one is narrow on one side. It was easy to single it out. And then you've got all this negative space here, the sky, and you work with that, and you have this beautiful coloration and so on and so forth. So as you just saw, there are several different ways to grab interesting images in the downtown area doing your architectural photography, whether it's reflections or a two-dimensional effect or even some disruption to add some tension in your photos. It would be interesting to see what you can come up with and how you can have a different interpretation with your architectural photography. Until next time, I'm Ray Scott, reminding you it's not what you see, it's how you see it. And I will see you soon.